So, about 8 months ago or so, I was introduced to the concept of head-end deployment. At the time, I thought it was a pretty cool idea, but I wasn't sure what to do with that knowledge. Well, here I am 8 months later, and I figured out exactly how I'm going to use that. I'm going to retrofit my older mid-power rockets to accommodate a Blue Raven altimeter and make them dual deployment. For reference, this is an example of how I was building a nose cone for a mid-power rocket. I've got a screw eye epoxied on here for an attachment point, and here I've cut a hole in the bottom. Inside, I stuffed foam, and this is where I would stash my Jolly Logic altimeter to record flight data. With this setup, I was relying on the motor ejection alone to eject the nose cone in parachutes to recover the rocket and save the day. Standard issue stuff here. This is a nose cone from a similar rocket that I've converted over to head-end deployment. I started by cutting off the bottom end of the shoulder to gain access to the inside. I had to file and sand the inside down to make it a bit more concentric so my bulkhead would fit properly. I used JB Weld to epoxy a piece of aluminum all-thread to the inside of the tip of the nose cone. And I epoxied a nut and washer roughly midway up. These serve as a stop. This is the sled and bulkhead that hold the altimeter. Here, I've epoxied a nylon bushing that serves as both a guide and a stop as it rides along the all-thread. Here, I have my Blue Raven altimeter and power perch mount. Leads run from the terminal block to the terminal bolts that run through the bulkhead. This is where I will attach the leads to an E-match. This whole assembly installs nice and easy on the all-thread like this. And I secure it with a nut, like so. The terminal bolts were a little close, so I didn't have room for a wing nut, unfortunately. And this is what I do. Next time I'll try to get those terminal bolts a little further away. Here, I have a .45 caliber casing, which I'll use as a well for the ejection charge. The head of the E-match will go into the bottom, followed by some black powder and stuffed with a bit of recovery wadding. Here, I've done the same thing to my 3-inch Der Big Red Max. I cut the bottom off the nose cone, epoxied the all-thread, nut and washer, and built my sled and bulkhead the same as the 2.26 inch. Of course, there was a good bit more room to work with here. I actually had room for a wing nut. Now, what's the purpose? First and foremost, this gives me redundancy and safety. The altimeter will become my primary deployment system. I will deliberately time the delay of the motor to be about a second late, and it will now serve as a backup. The altimeter is also more accurate at determining the precise moment of apogee than the delay of a motor, which is part of why it's becoming my primary system for deployment. Thirdly, this gives me more options with my altimeters. They become more versatile when I can use them in more rockets, especially rockets that weren't built with an altimeter bay in mind. I haven't actually had a chance to use them in flight yet, but I did do a ground test with an Estes igniter last night and everything worked just fine. I'll follow up with more video in a few months once I've had a chance to take these rockets to the proving grounds. If you guys have any comments or suggestions, feel free to leave them below. And as always, thanks for watching.